In the year 1315, Europe faced a disaster unlike anything it had seen for centuries. The rains came endless, relentless, and unforgiving. What followed would become known as the Great Famine, a catastrophe that pushed an entire continent to the edge of collapse. Entire generations who had lived through peaceful harvests suddenly found themselves at the mercy of a sky that refused to clear. For generations, Europe had enjoyed warm seasons and strong crops, but suddenly the climate shifted in a way no one understood. Cold winds blew early, storms arrived without warning, and the skies remained gray for months on end. Fields that once fed millions turned into swamps of thick, heavy mud. Farmers stared helplessly at land that had sustained their ancestors for centuries and now betrayed them. Farmers planted seeds, but the seeds drowned before they could take root. Plows sank into soaked earth. Wheat sprouted weak and yellow, and barley rotted beneath the surface. By the time summer arrived, it became painfully clear there would be no harvest at all. A continent built on agriculture was now starving from its own soil. Livestock suffered first, and suffered terribly. The wet weather brought waves of disease, cattle fever, lung infections, parasites that spread rapidly through weakened herds. Cows stopped producing milk. Sheep collapsed in fields, too sick to stand. Every dead animal meant more hunger, more fear, and fewer chances of survival for the families who depended on them. With crops failing, food prices multiplied overnight. A loaf of bread cost as much as a week's wages. And even then, few bakeries had flour to spare. The poor starved first, while the wealthy desperately tried to buy safety. But even gold couldn't fill empty granaries. Money meant nothing when the fields were barren. By winter, hunger became widespread across entire regions. Families dug through old storage, searching for anything remotely edible. Moldy bread, dried roots, scraps of grain hidden in corners of barns. Children cried through the night while parents sat in silence, knowing they had nothing left to give. As winter deepened, starvation spread like an invisible plague. Bodies weakened, minds dulled, and villages grew unnervingly quiet. People collapsed on roads, in fields, and on the floors of their homes, too weak to stand, too cold to continue. Chronic hunger began to break the rules of society. People ate grass, tree bark, and sometimes even their own seed grain meant for next year's planting. Some stole from neighbors. Others traded their last possessions, tools, blankets, family heirlooms, for a single bowl of thin soup. Dignity faded quickly when survival was at stake. Kings and lords promised relief, but delivered almost nothing. Roads were flooded, supplies were scarce, and corruption ran deep within the noble courts. Many rulers watched helplessly as their people starved by the thousands, unable or unwilling to stop the suffering. Urban centers suffered even more. Thousands fled into towns seeking food, only to find empty markets and guarded storehouses. Crowds rioted in desperation. Disease spread rapidly through cramped alleyways, and bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. Starvation weakens the immune system, and soon fevers, infections, and epidemics swept across Europe. The hungry died quickly. The sick died slower. There was no medicine, no cure, only prayer, hope, and the grim acceptance that many would not survive the winter. Order began to collapse. Farmers guarded what little they had with weapons. Travelers disappeared on forest roads, victims of robbery or hunger. Entire villages became battlegrounds where survival outweighed law, morality, and tradition. People believed the famine was divine punishment. Churches filled with desperate crowds begging for mercy, but the skies remained dark. For many, faith wavered as hunger tightened its grip on every family, every village, every kingdom. Historical accounts describe the darkest rumors, families so desperate they resorted to unthinkable acts. Whether all stories are true or not, they reveal the depth of Europe's suffering and the horrors people faced when starvation became their reality. Instead of relief, 1316 brought more rain, more storms, and more crop failures. People realized the famine was not a single event. It was becoming a cycle of despair that threatened to erase entire communities. By now, millions were dead or dying. Trade halted, armies disbanded. Some regions lost up to 25% of their entire population. Europe itself seemed to be breaking economically, socially, spiritually. Only in 1317 did the rains finally ease. The ground began to dry. Seeds once again sprouted green in the soil, but recovery was painfully slow. Most villages had no grain left to plant, no livestock left to breed, and no strength left to rebuild quickly. Those who endured returned to their fields with bodies weakened and spirits broken. Rebuilding took years, and the scars, emotional and physical, lasted for the rest of their lives. Every empty house, every abandoned field, every silent church bell reminded survivors of what had been lost. The Great Famine changed everything. It weakened Europe so deeply that future disasters like the Black Death struck with even greater force. The famine marked the beginning of a century of crisis, a time when old systems shattered and new worlds slowly emerged. Between 1315 and 1317, Europe came closer to collapse than at almost any other moment in its history. The Great Famine wasn't just a food shortage, it was a brutal reminder of how fragile medieval life truly was, and how easily an entire civilization could be brought to its knees by something as simple as rain.